I just, to me, I'm always looking to improve, but I can still acknowledge that I got some stuff down. Still nailed it close enough, but I would leave it at that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's healthy, right? I mean, when you rest on your laurels, yeah, I always tell people, hey, how long are you a subject matter expert? Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you achieve the term subject matter, or the if someone calls you a subject matter expert, if you've achieved that level of distinction, I mean, do you just get to stop learning about whatever it is you're a subject matter expert at? Right? You're a subject matter expert until the next piece of information comes that um, you know, you want to digest, right? So, I mean, if you just rest on this is what I know, then you're in that fixed mindset and it just keeps you from being able to grow and how to get better. I'm constantly looking at workshops and outlines and things like that. And I tinker a lot with I add graphics, I add, slides, I add words and information. And sometimes I'll pull out my phone in the middle of something, based off of a screenshot I got from LinkedIn or something, and I'll share it with them, right? And generational diversity or anything else like that. And it's just you look at it, I mean, I had to revise an outline, we turn in outlines for our classes and things like that. And I saw in 2018, as opposed to now, the classes, it was completely different. I had to really go in and, well, no, I don't do that anymore. I don't add that anymore. That's not part of, or this, actually I spend longer on this part, or I found something else that works. I found another activity that works, right? And so just as going along, I look at how can I convey this. I think I'm doing a pretty good job at this. I mean, people are responding well, but at the same time, is there a way to convey this more effectively? Is there a story that I can add? Is there something I've learned in the last 18 years that I can utilize as an example to talk about the same topic I was talking about in the early aughts, and make it relevant to today, right? And so
Right.
it's we're constantly learning, we're constantly growing, and I people say you have to learn something new every day. Well, I don't know what if I don't learn something new every day? Is that a learning opportunity? Okay, so I didn't learn something new today, but how am I? How am I with that feeling that I didn't learn something new today? And when I wake up in the morning, am I open to being able to learn something new that day? Right. So that's, I mean, those are thoughts, thinking about, I'm grateful for the ability to learn and research and, and really feel like, we've accomplished something. Like you mentioned, there's folks, who, do what we do and go through the motions. And there's folks who really try really hard and, sometimes it's, what's the difference, right? What's the difference between those folks who maybe go through the motions and will give you a, hey, that was a okay workshop, as opposed to, wow, that was great. That was engaging. Hey, can you come to Alabama? Right?
Mhm.
Can you come to Alaska? Right? Those things like that where we want more of you, right? And it's not, is it more of us? Is it more of our knowledge of the content? Is it more of the way that we present it? Right? There's so many different variables there. Some folks, they value you for your knowledge. Some folks value you for your personality. Some folks value that you, aren't just talking at them forever, right? Some folks want you to give them details, right? So, just being open to recognize what that room is and what those people are, right? So even if I didn't learn anything teaching a class, it was a different experience every time, which is, and be open to that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think one of the things I am grateful for in the work, right? Because that wasn't apparently I'm not grateful for work. I am grateful for work and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do what we do for sure. Um but what I think keeps me moving, what keeps me going, what keeps me enthusiastic about what we do is when it does make a difference. Carl and I were talking about a workshop that I did last week and how um, it just always kind of surprises me when, and I don't know if it surprises me if that's the right word, but how used to or accustomed to our facilitation style. And and for me, like
I think you froze too.
people
Maybe I
can't,
froze.
you were frozen. You were frozen.
Okay. I'm sorry. And you said for
It's okay.
you,
Um,
from your
I have to remember
facilitation
what I was saying.
style.
Oh, like for my facilitation style, I really like to connect with people. I One of my biggest fears as an instructor, as a coach, is that I'm going to waste people's time. It's really something that I'm always thinking about. If people are paying, because our services are not cheap. If people are paying, a good amount of money, I want to make sure that they have an adequate return on investment. I know what I'm sharing with them is information, but it's not just the information. The information I share is accessible to anybody. If you have the internet, if you have a library card, if you can shop at Barnes and Noble, you have access to this information. I try to package it in a way that it is accessible and it is meaningful and it is pragmatic. Take it and something that it's a good use of your time. It's going to do something that's going to make your life better, either personally or professionally. So when I worked with this group and they were from all over the world and from different states, and as we worked together throughout the day, she was the past president of this board. So it was I'll leave their organization out of it because, nobody's business. But she was the past president, and they have a new president, and it was kind of like a transition for their board. And um the past president, she was so cool because she was already ready to retire. That like about to retire vibe that people have. Like, I don't even care about this stuff anymore. I'm here for the potluck at the lunchtime or whatever. But she was really funny. And at one time at the break, she comes to me and she says, "You are like the perfect mix of fluffy and honest." And I was like, "Tell me more." Did you see did you see what I put on my lunch plate today? What fluffy are you talking about? No. But she says, "No, like the things that you share," she's like, "are because we were talking a lot about like trust and conflict resolution and courageous or crucial conversations. That was the topic." And she's like, "You share the fluffy part, right? The stuff about compassion and empathy and generosity and the stuff that we're all kind of hardened to." She's like, "And so, a lot of people share that." She's like, "But you have that little zing to you too, because then you come back and you say, you know, as much as you're making everybody else the villain, like you're the villain in somebody else's story too. Like, raise your hand if you've never made a mistake." She's like, "So you make people uncomfortable enough to be open to your information." Right. And I thought, well, that's a skill. And so I got a lot of compliments from a lot of people in that room, which compliments get you, flattery gets you everywhere, by the way. Flattery will get you everywhere. But I also felt really, really good because that means that I didn't waste people's time. And that's important to me. So um I hope it was time well spent for them. And I think it was. A lot of people shared that it was good. It was a really good session for them, both personally and professionally. And that makes me happy. Because I'm from the mindset of, if you can do better at work, you'll do better at home and vice versa, in terms of like how we communicate and how we talk to each other. Like, if we can improve our relationships at work, it'll inevitably help some of the relationships at home too.
Yeah.
And that just makes for a better world altogether, which is my life goal. I'm trying to live my best life. It's hard to do when everybody's in chaos.
Yeah. But I mean, things translate. People talk about, whoa, work at work, home at home. And sure, we have different uses of our personality. The disc focuses on what you do at work, right? But, at the same time, those are some lessons you can learn that not only help you in your job, but also help you when you're negotiating a price on a car, or when you're having to have a difficult conversation with your significant other, or, how to, effectively motivate and discipline, children, or motivate older children, or whatever else it is, right? Or listen, right? And to have
Mhm.
those things are so translatable, and it really is important, just to have that thought, right? Of what is it that I'm doing at work? How does it serve me at home? How is what I'm doing at home serving me at work? Because stress doesn't care where the hell you are, right? Stress
Right.
is portable. Stress goes with you whether you like it or not, right? And
Mhm.
if you ever wake up in the middle of the night thinking about what you have to do at work the next day, that'll tell you right there, right? Or, I don't know about you, Tiff, but when I'm on the road, I probably wake up maybe two or three times in the middle of the night thinking about, oh my gosh, did my alarm go off? Right. And
Mhm.
that's me doing that, preparing my brain to, I don't want to be late. And like you said, I don't want to waste people's time either. Right. I'm all about practical information, and it's such an important thing. I want you to be able to not just take the information with you, but also to apply it and to make it count. And I've found that is one of my core values, like practical application. I don't want to waste your time. But I found myself when I first started stuffing so much stuff into my trainings because I was like, oh, you need to learn about this, you need to learn about that, what understanding and welfare to work clients, you need to know this, you need to know that. Let me tell you a story about this, let me tell you about this topic, and what the research is. And very often it ended up an 8-hour lecture, right?
Mhm.
And it, okay, maybe they learned a lot, but that's one of those things. Okay, so what did you talk about today? Oh, we talked about, welfare to work. Oh, well, what topics? Oh, angry clients, you know, that's it, right? As opposed to what'd you get out of this, right? One of the most rewarding things I had is one of the people that is, was in the Leadership Academy for California Health and Human Services that I run. And at their graduation last month, she walked up to me and she said, there's something you said that really stuck with me and really resonated and changed the way I think about things. And this is somebody, who's an adult in their 40s. But, and I said, well, what is that? She goes, well, just the idea that ambition isn't always upward. It can be, you know, horizontal. It's not necessarily about always going up. It's about being as well-rounded as you can be and getting in most experience that you have. Some people, that's what they look for in ambition, and that's okay. And that just, if you have upward ambition, that's okay too. But if you recognize that other people don't have the same idea of ambition as you, then you can allow them to grow in their space as well. Right. And she said, so that just really stuck out to me. And I just wanted to thank you. And this is somebody who's a senior manager in state government. Right. And so it's something that just those things like that, and then having the activity around it, telling the story, asking people at the table, think about what's your idea of ambition and where does it come. Just that conversation they had at the table, those five people, that was more meaningful than me trying to, define ambition, right? And so, but I found at the beginning when I first started, I used to just pack it in. And I mean, when I go through some of my material now, sometimes I will take out sections
Mhm.
just because I think, okay, well, you know what? That can actually be part of another class, right? But this class, if we really want to focus, what are the three or four things? Especially if it's a half day class, if it's 3.5 hours, right? Then what are, you have the introduction and then three topics, right? And sometimes maybe two topics. I don't know, right? But what are the things that are, specific to this class, and how are we going to help them with the transfer of knowledge, right? So to have the conversation, have the role play, have the scenario, back it up with a video, and allow them to really experience it as much as listen to me talk about it, right? But that I used to pack in all that information because I didn't want to waste their time. I felt like I was wasting their time if I didn't give them that idea. And I think that's, I've had a lot of folks who, I've worked with that are, college professors and used to lectures that are teaching, professional classes and are like, yeah, I never get to the end of my PowerPoint. And so I realized I need to pull back and, do something a little different. And so it's something, I totally agree with you. I hate wasting people's time, but also what is the value, right? What's the value of having people share things, right? And
Yeah.
so, it's just a different mindset for me. It's not about just dumping people with knowledge. It's about people experiencing those things. And so I hear you, and it's something that I've evolved and grown as an instructor, and just as a person, right? How do I let people
Mhm.
experience those things rather than just tell them? Because that's not easy, especially when you have kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's part of the, I guess, growth, change into like the changes in what we do and how we do it. It's not just for us, but even like how we work and how we lead and how we communicate. There has to be a shift. The challenge with people who are in charge thinking that they're the expert in everything and that their way is the right way and the only way, you're missing out on an opportunity to really kind of grow and learn from other people and other experiences, which I think is such a missed opportunity because we can't keep doing things the same way and expect different results, right? Like I've grown up in working for the county, was my very first, I mean, second real adult job, but I most of my adult life has been in government. And the way that we did things when I first started would never, ever, ever work in today's society. We've evolved too much, both technologically, the way the clients are not the same, the systems are not the same, the legislation is not the same. Um, Even for us, like we're about to do a big conference, so see you all next week at the. Well, I guess it's in 2 weeks. I'm not sure. At some point, we'll see
No,
you at the
it's next
California.
week. Yeah.
It sure is next week. Okay, see, I'm not even ready for that, but we'll be at the California Training Academy. Um, and the whole entire academy was everything to do with um changing the culture and changing the approach to the way that we work to be more client centered. And someone mentioned that this is like the 15th time that we've tried to do this culture shift. But I think one of the reasons it's so challenging is that there's a lot of people in this work who can't or won't change their mindset about the way that we approach services. And it's this is the way we've always done it. This is how it's always been done, right? That's the mindset. And it's I really challenge people to think about that differently because it just doesn't work. If it worked, you wouldn't be overwhelmed. If it worked the way we've been doing it, we wouldn't have sky high caseloads. If it worked, people would want to come work for government. And it would be like that good job that everybody used to want. Now we can't keep people hired. They come and they get the job and they leave within the first year because it's so if the way we've been doing it worked, then we would be in a different position. And so um this idea of asking and communicating and listening to each other, to me it's wild that that's even a foreign concept that we can't have conversations. And so um this is where like I really try to again practice what we preach here. And I didn't even like recognize that I was doing it. But as I started to pay attention to how I develop courses and how I develop facilitations and how I've done workshops, I've noticed that I have always used some version of the coach approach in the way that I train because I'll be like, here's some information. What does this mean for you? What does this look like in your work? How have you witnessed this? Share an example. And I get people to really think about it. And then I might say, and here's a solution. What's not working for you? Okay, here's a technique, or here's a skill set, or here's a mindset shift, or here's ways to be able to vocalize these thoughts. Here's some language. Um, but it's I just that coach approach is really just about problem solving, but I don't have to solve the problem. And that's I think where we need to see the shift happen, where shift needs to change. This shift needs to change. That's where I think we have like such an incredible opportunity for how we work with each other and how we live with each other and how we communicate with each other. Stop telling everybody what you think, which is ironic here on this podcast where we do all the talking and you all just listen. But with that being said, in our like two-way conversations, we have to stop doing so much telling and telling everybody what they should do based on what we did or what we think we would do or whatever. And really just start asking people those open-ended questions. What is it that you want? What would you like to be different? What are some ways that you could approach that? What's worked for you in the past? What do you want to avoid? What's your biggest fear about this? How can you overcome those challenges? Like those types of questions where we're really approaching with curiosity versus, well, you need to do this and you should have done that and you could do this or you could do that. That is so 2000s, right? We're so over that. So how do we move into the future? We have to change the way that we work. Period.
I think the what you were searching for was 2000 and late, right? So
Yeah, it's so 2000 late. It is so 2000 late.
but
Now I'm singing Black Eyed Peas in my mind. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to be fergalicious
uh,
for the rest of the day.
uh, I was thinking more of the boom, 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 but yeah. But,
So,
but what you were saying there was something that really what resonated with me and what you were saying was just that idea of helping people to come to their own conclusions. I had a manager, just really implore me, just help me help my staff find a way to take care of themselves. They're always
mhm,
coming to me, and there was, and it was a challenge, and it was stressful for them. And she was telling me I'm in meetings every day from 8 to 5 every day. And she goes, if I'm late to another meeting, it's because I had to go to the bathroom. And so she says it's a challenge when my staff feels like they need to come to me for everything. And
mhm.
so I was like, well, cool. Well, how does it make you feel? She goes, well, I like them coming to me. I like to be able to solve their problem. I just don't have time. And I said, okay, well, using the coach approach, so, what is something that you've tried to help them to figure it out on their own? Well, I've told them they need to figure it out on their own. So, we can train people to talk to us. We train our staff on how to engage with us, right? We train our clients on how to engage with us, right? And if we really have that spirit of, I'm here to solve your problem, because that dopamine hit is wonderful and it makes me feel like you know, I'm really making a difference in the world, then we're not giving that other person the capacity to solve their own issues. We talked about that many times, but just thinking about, those examples of asking questions. How often do, managers, especially in government service, ever feel like they can say to somebody, I don't know, right? Or tell me something I don't know,
Yeah.
right? It's just, it's like you're automatically supposed to know these things. And so
Mhm.
it can be really hard with folks, especially when they get into a new role and they're not necessarily prepared for it, because there's not a leadership academy or a leadership onboarding class. There's not a leadership onboarding class, right? You get the job and automatically, hey, look, you're in that role. And then maybe supervisor series or manager series or lead worker series, whatever it pops up, and you apply for that. But that's, sometimes it's a year or 2 years after you've already got the role, right? So
Hmm.
what are you doing, right? My first management job, I was given a 3-inch binder that said operating instructions and it said, go forth. There's your training. I'm like, all right, it's not telling me anything about what I need to do, but I guess I need to figure it out. Right. And so I did figure it out, and I didn't figure it out exactly the way that my boss wanted me to. And it was kind of butt heads. But a lot of that was, I wish I'd have known ahead of time. Right. I wish I'd have
Yeah.
known what you expected of me. So those expectations are so powerful. I'm working with the client right now on developing an idea of expectations for the bottom of their job descriptions and job postings. Right. And so what does that mean? And, just a lot of it is, well, we want you to be on time. We want you to dress professionally. We want you to provide excellent customer service. I said, okay, what does that mean? Right. You want someone to be punctual, right? If they came from a retail store where punctual means you show up, if your shift starts at 9 o'clock, you can show up at 9:06 and still be on time, right? Is that what you're talking about? Or is your idea of punctual, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late? Okay, well, so what if
Hmm.
someone doesn't get paid for those extra 5 minutes now, right? So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. And some people would have that. Some people just think being punctual means I can drop my bag at my desk, turn on my computer, and go get my coffee and socialize for half an hour, and then come back and log in, right? Different people have different experiences with punctuality, different ideas from their parents, from previous, from class, from school, from their friends, from previous jobs. And so what does it mean to you to be punctual? What does it mean to you to be professional? Right. And I challenge people all the time to, I mean, if you close your eyes and you think of somebody who's a professional, what do they look like? What are they wearing? How are they carrying themselves? And then I tell people, open their eyes and, is anybody in the room dressed like that person that you thought was a professional? And if somebody's wearing a shirt and tie, a guy, they'll say, yeah, them.
Hmm.
Because that's what we were taught. I mean, our generation, we were taught by the men in the gray flannel suits, right? Or what TV told us was, supposed to be the model professional, right? And I mean, just think about some of the counties we've worked in where if a guy doesn't wear a tie, then they wouldn't get to train in that county anymore. That was just up until about 7 or 8 years ago, right? So I mean, those things like that, what are we inundated with that now as we've evolved as a culture and a society, you can, not wearing a tie is actually a power move, right? Having tattoos showing at work is acceptable, right? Just those different things, that people can do that we couldn't, which cause us sometimes to have that cognitive dissonance because our brain, you talked about the idea of, you know, I don't understand why people don't want to change and why it's so hard for some folks because our brain doesn't want to change. Our brain wants to stay the same. Our brain wants to be able to see you, put you in a bucket and predict your behavior. That's how our brain works. When it sees something that does not compute with what we were taught, we have that challenge and we resist it. We resist change. We resist new things. We resist learning new things because that causes me to have that, like I say, cognitive dissonance or that idea of, this isn't right. This isn't what my parents taught me. This isn't what my boss taught me. My favorite boss taught me to do this. And now 20 years later, this Gen Z person's walking in doing the exact opposite, but they're being productive, but they're not matching the point, right? Matching the part, And so it's so challenging. We have to trick our brains. We have to trick our brains to lean into the discomfort of something that we're not used to, right? Our brain's hardwired to predict danger and safety, but we're not out in the savannah anymore. We're in, for the most part, controlled environments, right? But the idea of something's different is the same response as danger. We get that amygdala hijack. And so, when people are resistant to change or they're, oh, that's just not right, or kids these days, or whatever else it is, it's because it's messing with my wiring. It's messing with my neural pathways. It's messing with my connections. When you're telling me something that I don't know, I have to fill in that. And the part of our that fills it in is a part of our safety, right? I got to go to my boss's office. I don't know why. So, my limbic system says it must be bad. And we fill in the worst case scenario. And we go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode, right? And so that resistance is natural. It can be frustrating sometimes, but it is absolutely a natural phenomenon that is important for us to be able to recognize and say, this person came up, underneath somebody else, a different culture, a different leader, or maybe I was with them and now we're changing roles. That's a huge thing. I mean, you wrote the lead worker series, right? Going from coworker to supervisor, coworker to, a mentor, right? And so what do you have to do to be able to do that? That's one of the things I tell people when I became a supervisor of my old unit, no more happy hour, no more pampered chef parties, right? Which sucked because I love my pampered chef party. No more body butter, no more all the body shop parties because that's where I got my body butter from one of my coworkers, right? I still got it on the side, but we didn't tell anybody. But it was just those things where we had to establish boundaries because I don't know, Tiff, how many times have you seen somebody get a new role as a leader and then they still hang out with their bestie who is a subordinate and they want to talk shit, right? And yeah, preach, girl, preach.
Then you start, yeah, and then you start saying you want to choke slap people, and all of a sudden it's a problem. Just for the
Yeah,
record.
yeah,
But can I share with you something real fast about the choke slap? I'm sorry, I don't mean to hijack this conversation, but I got asked to do a keynote speech one time about professionalism, and I had no idea how I didn't know any idea of what I was going to say. I don't plan, by the way, I don't plan speeches. Like I plan like maybe topics, or ideas, but I don't write like my sentences or what I'm going to say or how I'm going to say it till I'm actually doing it. But the only thing I knew about this freaking keynote speech is that I was going to say, it's ironic that I'm here talking to you today about professionalism because I once got demoted for threatening to choke slap somebody. Okay. Now this that was all I knew. All I knew I was going to say. That was the only part of it that was scripted in my mind. And this place where I was doing this keynote speech, we work with like liaisons and such. The person who is now the director of that organization was the person who demoted me. And I had no idea. I had no idea that she even worked there. So when I get there for the day, they were doing this huge, like 400 people, like employee appreciation event. And so this is like where I was doing this speech. And it was just hilarious because I'm at the presenters table, and I don't know if any of you ever go to big conferences, but they usually always have like a table where all the big wigs sit. And so as a presenter, I'm sitting up front with all the big wigs. And so so I'm all chit-chatting with people and, schmoozing up. And the lady sits down and I almost lost it. And so I told her, I said, you know what's funny? Because she remembered me, of course. I worked for her. She remembered me. And she's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that you were going to be our speaker today. I'm so excited." Blah, blah, blah. She was happy to see me. And then I said, "You know what's hilarious is that I didn't know anything about what I was going to say except for." And then I told her, and I go, "And I had no idea that you would be here." She didn't even remember. She didn't even
yeah,
remember the situation. She didn't remember what had happened, but obviously I remember what had happened. But I just thought that was so hilarious that the person who demoted me, and I don't talk about that often, by the way. I don't talk about that experience often, but I just thought it was really freaking hilarious that she was in the audience. The one that demoted me for threatening to choke slap. I didn't threaten. Well, hold on, let me repeat. I didn't really threaten to choke slap anybody. I didn't like go up to be, I'm gonna choke slap you,
choke
Carl.
slap
Like
you.
that's not
Yeah.
what happened.
I don't know what it is, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So I didn't threaten. Nobody was ever really threatened. I want to just clear up my reputation right now. Nobody was ever really threatened. What I said to a friend who was a subordinate, I said, when so and so said this, I wanted to choke slap her. That's what I said. But of course, by the time it got up to the bosses, I had someone pinned up against their car, hanging, dangling from their toes. No, not that serious, but that's what I can imagine the story was. Um, I thought that was funny. So sorry to hijack that, but I
Oh,
will say that that was the big struggle for me. I was from a small community, so the people I worked with were some of my best friends. Like I had shared a home with one of them. I had been in another person's wedding. I was the godmother of another one of my coworkers' daughters. Like we were very close knit. And so it was hard to establish the boundaries between personal and professional. And as someone who really like values my relationships, it felt I I don't know, I really struggled with it. I really felt like I was turning my back because I got a promotion. I had to be a different person. No, I'm going to be the same person. I just have a different job duties, but I'm not going to fundamentally change who I am, including like who I surround myself with. But that was a really hard lesson to learn that you have to. I didn't
it's
like
a
it.
huge one.